dispel the myth that keto or carnivore is some fad diet. This is literally the oldest diet known to humanity. It cannot be bad for you because the four things that humans have been doing for the longest period of time as a species is breathing air, drinking water, playing in the sun, and eating meat. Iodine's not just about your thyroid. Every cell line we've ever looked at has something on its cell membrane called a sodium iodide symporter. And it will not cause thyroid cancer, it will not cause hyperthyroidism, and it will not cause or worsen Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Iodine is a huge deal. The average doctor has no idea about anything I just said. I think it's both. I think it's abundantly clear to anybody who thinks about this for more than 15 seconds that only for the last 0.01% of our existence on this planet did we eat foods, and I put that in air quotes for a reason. I want to talk about that. Foods that come from factories, and we pretend that's really food. That has never happened in the history of this species. That's number one. Number two, I think that eating a proper human diet improves your mental health. It improves your mental function. It improves your physical health and function. And it decreases chronic, inappropriate inflammation. And all those things together, Jesse, if anybody's thought about human physiology for more than a minute, they're like, well, that's got to make you feel better, act better, think better. You're in a better mood. You're in a better place in your life. Everybody's been in pain at some point. Everybody's been inflamed. Everybody's been overstressed, overworked, underpaid, on the brink of bankruptcy. That's kind of the baseline state of how you feel when you're eating an inflammatory, nutrient-poor diet. You're already set up for failure before you ever begin. But now let's talk about somebody who's just heard about a proper human diet and they're 50, 60, 70, got type 2 diabetes, hypertension, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver. They're at least 30, if not more, pounds overweight. And with that comes all the brain fog, all the irritability, the anxiety, the being down in the dumps, not being able to sleep well. All that stuff goes hand in hand. It's all interconnected. That's what a lot of people don't realize, that is even your mental health is connected to your physical health intimately. It's not some kind of tangential connection. It is directly related to your physical health. And that's why we're seeing so much improvement in mental health issues when people adopt a real whole food ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet. And so that person, within just a few days, they're going to notice that their mental clarity is better. Their brain fog is better. They've just got a little more energy. Things that they've been putting off, they thought they were lazy or procrastinators. They're like, I'm going to get to that project now. I'm going to go ahead and scale up that thing that I've been meaning to do forever. And then also, if they're checking their blood sugars, that's going to start to come down noticeably within 5 to 10 days. Their blood pressure is going to begin to slowly come down within 5 to 10 days. Though they're going to be able to see immediate feedback. And that's one of the things that made me fall in love with low carb, keto, carnivore very early, is that because I've been practicing medicine for over 22 years, Jesse. I've recommended lots of diets, including Weight Watchers, including Slim Fast. There was MetaFast, the ADA diet, the AHA DASH diet. In the first few years of my medical practice, I recommended all those diets, depending. But I never saw any signal. Now, what does that mean? So when I recommend something to you as a patient, and I'm like, okay, let's chat again in 6 months, right? And you go ahead and live your life, and you obviously heard me. We had a conversation. And then you come back in 6 months, and you've gained weight, and your blood sugar's worse, and your blood pressure's worse. That's signal to me that diet was worthless to you. Either it was too hard to follow, or it just didn't work, or some combination of those two things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But so when I started recommending keto and carnivore for my most severely obese patients, my patients with the highest A1Cs, just severe diabetes, either type 1 or type 2, overweight, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 or more pounds overweight, when they would come back for their 3-month or 6-month checkup, it was immediately obvious that something had changed. They had lost a significant amount of weight in 3 or 6 months. Their A1C had dropped a significant amount. I'm talking 2 or 3 percentage points in 3 to 6 months. Their blood pressure was down 5, 10, 15 points on the average. Their blood sugar was down anywhere from 20 to 100 points on average. Huge signal coming back. And, Jesse, and for many people, more importantly, their chronic anxiety was better. Their chronic aches and pains were much better. Their knee arthritis, their shoulder arthritis, and keep in mind the shoulder is not a weight-bearing joint, right? And before people jump on and say, well, yeah, they lost weight, of course their knee's going to feel better, but what about their shoulder arthritis? What about their thumb arthritis? How is that better? Those are not load-bearing joints. And so initially when I thought keto carnivore was just a weight loss hack. That's all I thought it was initially, because I had used it to lose a chunk of weight and reverse my prediabetes. So I thought it was a good hack for that. And then maybe you go back to the ADA diet, or maybe you go back to the DASH diet, I don't know. But you fix them with this and then you go back to whatever. But when I kept hearing these anecdotal reports of, oh my God, this is better. Does this diet do this? Does this diet do that? Initially, I discounted that as just anecdotal, like, yeah, you know, people will say anything. People are crazy. But then I kept hearing the same tune over and over and over. 5 patients, 10, a score, 100 patients saying, yes, my arthritis is better when I eat this way. I had to go back and go, this is more than just anecdotal weird stuff happening. This is doing something to these people at the molecular biology level. This is affecting the way their cells function and very likely the way their mitochondria function as well. It's got to be doing something physiological. This is not just because they lost weight, right? And that's when I really started digging back into the basic sciences, trying to figure out how is this diet doing this? Because I had people who were on the orthopedic surgeon's schedule to have their shoulder joint or their thumb joint replaced, had a date already on the calendar. And they would come back to me for their diabetes follow-up, and they now were no longer type 2. They were just pre-diabetic, barely. And they would say, you know, I did something. It was maybe dumb. I don't know. You tell me. I called the surgeon, and I canceled my appointment for the shoulder replacement because it just doesn't hurt much anymore. It doesn't bother me like it did. Was that dumb? And I'm like, well, no, you obviously don't want to have shoulder replacement surgery unless the pain and the disability is so severe that it impacts your daily living. So no, I'm glad you did that. I'm sure the surgeon's not too happy about it, but I'm glad you did that, and I think you're probably glad of that too. And so any diet, any dietary intervention that has that kind of global impact on a patient's physical and mental health, there's got to be more to it than this is just a weight loss hack.
All right, so to summarize where we've come to so far, it affects mental health, physical health. You've mentioned inflammation. So one of the levers this is pulling on is anti-inflammatory, nutrient density, mitochondria. But let's zoom in on the physiology and talk more about those changes on a cellular level when somebody embraces this diet.
Yeah. So really the biggest physiological change that happens for most people, there's 2, is that their insulin level, which was almost without exception chronically high. Back when they were eating, even the American Diabetes Association diet, they were eating too many total carbohydrates, and that was keeping their insulin level chronically too high, okay? Because the American Diabetes Association, I'm sure they mean well, but they have not been a benefit to people with diabetes on average. They recommend snacking between meals. They recommend high-carb diets. Their website is full of high-carbohydrate and even diets with added sugar. It's literally on their website. And so that's not going to cut it if you have hyperinsulinemia. Now, as you know, because we've discussed this, most doctors don't even check an insulin level. They don't know that they should be checking it. They don't know it's important. They don't know why it's important. If a patient asks them, hey, check my insulin level, they're like, why? I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to interpret that. And I applaud the doctor for being honest, but I also denigrate the doctor for being ignorant, because insulin is one of the basic hormones in the human body, has hundreds, if not thousands, of functions in the human body, many of which I opine we haven't even discovered yet, because we quit looking at basic human physiology when the pharmaceutical revolution happened. Everybody just wanted to research, how can I invent $1 million drug? And so that I think that lowering the insulin back to the normal range, that's one of the biggest things. And then the second thing is much of the inflammation in people's body is caused by their diet. Now, when I say that, let's just keep talking to somebody who's brand new to this. You're like, well, I would understand that if you were talking about gut inflammation, gut problems, but I don't have any gut problems. What I've got is arthritis in multiple joints. How is changing what I eat going to help that? I don't understand the connection. Or, my gut's fine, but I have psoriasis or eczema or severe acne, chronic skin inflammation. I don't see how diet's going to play a role in that. It's got to be stuff I'm putting on my skin, or maybe sun or something touching my skin. How does the diet affect that? Or then people with mental health really cannot see the connection, because they've been so trained by psychiatry and psychology that your mental health and any mental conditions you may have is completely disconnected from your body. That your body has nothing to do with your brain. Somehow it's like psychiatrists and psychologists think the human brain is kept in a box in the closet somewhere. They act like it's not kept literally in your body and is directly connected to every hormone circulating in your body. And so the inflammation comes down. That's the other big thing that is important, because it decreases your risk of heart attack and stroke and hundreds of other things happening. It makes you feel better. It makes you less achy. It decreases your chronic pain regardless of the cause. Another thing that the beginner is like, how in the world does eating meat and eggs and seafood, fish, and maybe some low carb veg and low carb nuts and a few berries, how in the world does that make my joints better, or make my mental health better, or make my skin better? It does, because it lowers the chronic inappropriate inflammation levels all over your body, not just in your gut. And it lowers your insulin level back down closer to normal, which is that's basically just at a 50,000 foot view, not really getting into the molecular biology. That's how it helps you lose weight. Because when you say I want to lose some weight, you don't mean I want to lose bone strength. You don't mean I want to lose muscle mass. You mean I want to lose fat. And when your insulin level is chronically high, you're going to have a very difficult time losing and keeping off any meaningful amount of fat. But when you lower that insulin level back down closer to normal, all of a sudden you've unlocked your body's ability to metabolize and use that fat for energy. What has more phosphorus than Swiss chard, more vitamin A than kale, and more selenium than beet greens? There is a nutrient-dense superfood that is very affordable, and you can make it taste very delicious. It's liver, whether it's chicken liver, beef, goose, duck, sheep, or venison and other wild game. Liver is the ultimate superfood. First, let's dispel a few myths about eating liver. You may have heard that liver is full of stored toxins from the animal. This is absolutely untrue, 100% false. The liver breaks down toxins that are immediately excreted in the animal's urine or feces. There are no stored toxins in liver. You may have heard that liver is very high in cholesterol. Liver is a good source of nutritional cholesterol, but it in no way increases your risk of a heart attack or a stroke. I have multiple other videos about cholesterol on this channel, and even the American Heart Association now admits that eating foods high in cholesterol or saturated fat in no way increase your risk of a heart attack or a stroke. There are many people who say, if you eat liver too often, you'll get a toxic dose of vitamin A. Liver is a very excellent source of vitamin A, but there has never been a documented case of hypervitaminosis A from eating the liver of a domesticated animal. There is no case report. This has never happened in human beings. Another is that if you eat the liver of an animal, it contains pesticides or antibiotics. Nothing could be further from the truth. Again, the liver breaks these down and they are excreted immediately. In no way does the liver store antibiotics or pesticides that the animal may have been exposed to. Now let's talk about the nutrition found in liver. And this applies to all liver, from chicken liver to beef liver. Beef liver does seem to be the most nutrient dense of all, but many people don't like beef liver that much. I would encourage you, whether you currently love or hate liver, you need to learn to like it, because if you would like to partake in an actual superfood, liver is the superfood. Let's talk about, first of all, the amino acids in liver. A 100 gram, that's about 3.5 ounces of liver, contains somewhere between 25 and 30 grams of protein. And this protein is a complete protein. It contains every single one of the essential amino acids that your body needs but cannot make. You get all of those from just a single serving of liver. Let's talk about the fatty acids. There are essential fatty acids that you have to ingest in order to have optimum function. Liver contains all of the essential fatty acids in each single serving. What about vitamins? Is liver a good source of vitamins? Any liver, from the cheapest to the most expensive that you can find, is going to be an excellent source of vitamin B12, vitamin A, one of the best sources in the world of vitamin A, of folate, of vitamin B2, vitamin B5, vitamin B3. There's even vitamin C in liver. You're like, wait, what? I thought I could only get vitamin C in fruits. That's absolutely not true. Liver is also an excellent source of vitamin B6, vitamin B1, and vitamin E. There's really no other source where you can get all of the fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin E, and vitamin D, except in liver. Eating a single portion of liver can actually give you over 100% of the recommended daily intake of multiple vitamins. Now, what about the minerals? Liver is full of minerals. It is an excellent source of selenium, iron, phosphorus, zinc, copper, manganese, potassium, magnesium, sodium, and calcium. Your body needs all these for optimal function, and they're all contained in liver. Several of them, a single serving of liver is going to give you over 100% of the RDI for that mineral. If you think cholesterol is your enemy, you need to watch this video to the bitter end, because I'm going to blow that myth completely up. So the first thing you need to know is that the human body makes cholesterol. Actually, 80% of the cholesterol in your bloodstream at any given moment, your body made it. Only 20% comes from your diet, even if you're eating a high cholesterol diet. Now, the manufacturing of cholesterol in the human body is a very complicated process. As you can see from these chemical flow charts, all the enzymes involved at each step, at each chemical reaction, there can be a genetic defect that makes it more difficult, if not impossible, for your body to make enough cholesterol for all of the functions that your body uses it for on a daily basis. So the truth of the matter is that yes, we all make some degree of cholesterol, but many of us are not good manufacturers of cholesterol because of a genetic defect that may either have partial or full penetrance in our genetic code. So the number one function of cholesterol is that it's absolutely a building block for life in human beings. You have over 30 trillion human cells in your body at any given time. And each of these cells has a cell membrane around it. Without that cell membrane, it would not function properly. It would cease to function. That cell membrane would die, and then you would ultimately die within a few minutes if you didn't contain cholesterol in every single cell membrane of every single cell in your body. In fact, the average cell membrane is made up of over 30% cholesterol. So a third of each cell membrane is cholesterol. Every cell in your body has to have cholesterol in order to form a properly functioning cell membrane. Now that sounds very important, doesn't it? Function number 2 is that your body uses cholesterol, kind of like Bondo or spackle, and it uses it to repair damage and to protect your body from damage that's been done. Indeed, when researchers first found cholesterol deposits in the arterial walls, they thought that the cholesterol was doing the damage. That's a very juvenile, sophomoric way of thinking. Actually, your body was putting that cholesterol there to try to stabilize and to repair and to heal the damage that was done to those arterial membranes by the highly inflammatory, high carbohydrate modern human diet. So here's a picture, a representation of the cholesterol molecule, and I'm going to leave it right there as I bring up all of the other hormones and vitamins that are made out of cholesterol. Yeah, your body uses cholesterol as one of the foundational building blocks of testosterone, estradiol, progesterone. Those sound pretty important. Any of you guys out there with low testosterone, your testosterone is made out of cholesterol. Also the adrenal hormones, cortisol and aldosterone, which literally modulate and regulate and cause to happen thousands of chemical reactions in the body that are mandatory for not only optimal function, but for any function whatsoever. Without those 5 hormones, you would die within minutes. Your body also uses cholesterol as a basic building block for most of the vitamin D in your body. And you can see the resemblance in the 2 molecules, right? So as your blood goes through your skin, ultraviolet light from the sun happens to cholesterol. Several steps later, voila, vitamin D. Your body also uses cholesterol to make bile, which is made by your liver and stored in the gallbladder, if you still have one. And your body uses this bile to emulsify or break down the fats that you eat. Now, this is an excellent point. I want you to pay very careful attention to this. Human physiology always makes sense. Now, if cholesterol were truly the enemy, dastardly molecule that we're taught that it is, your body secretes tons of bile into your small intestine in order to emulsify fats. Now, if cholesterol was the villain, your body would allow that to pass through, and you would poop out all that extra cholesterol. That'd be an excellent release valve. Oh no, my friend. You know what your body does? It actually actively reabsorbs the bile, the cholesterol in the bile, back into the circulation to be reused again and again and again. So I think that one physiological step right there is a damning nail in the coffin of the cholesterol is bad for you hypothesis, because your body's got an excellent escape route. If it needed to, it could dump a pound of cholesterol into your small intestine every day, pass through to the large intestine and out through the toilet. But your body says, no, that cholesterol is too valuable, and it reclaims the majority of it and pulls it back into the circulation to use again. Without the bile that's made of cholesterol, you would not be able to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. You would pass these through. You wouldn't absorb them. And without the fat-soluble vitamins, you would be dead in a few days. Now, after seeing all these very important physiological things, you may be asking the logical question, why does my doctor want to lower my cholesterol so much? Why are they telling me to eat a cholesterol-free diet and then also take a cholesterol-lowering statin or PCSK9 inhibitor? Why do they want it to be so low? My answer to you is, that's a good damn question. You should let your doctor watch this video and then say, now, doc, these things sound very important to me. Shouldn't I be trying to, as the human body does, preserve and conserve my cholesterol? I shouldn't be trying to pharmaceutically lower it, right? So let's all stop villainizing cholesterol. Let's accept it for what it is. It is a good guy in the human body. Your body makes 80% of it. Every single cell membrane in your body is at least 30% made from cholesterol. Cholesterol is used in making multiple hormones and vitamins. It's used to heal and repair hundreds of tissues in the human body. Cholesterol is your friend.
Every single cell in the body needs iodine. Every tissue needs iodine. Iodine is an antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. It's a heavy metal chelator. It's my shield. We use more nutrients when we're in a state of stress. If your body's fighting an infection, that is a stress state. You need more iodine. So it boosts your immune system. Your immune system needs iodine, the substances that interfere with the absorption of iodine. Fluoride, chloride, bromide. So that is really why people need to supplement, because they have been exposed to substances that prevent the absorption of iodine, even if they can get it in their food source, which they can't really. There are places in the world that have too much fluoride in the ground. Certain places in England where tea is grown, India, China. I don't think there's any way you can get away with drinking black tea, white tea, green tea. I mean, I lived in China, so I have access to the best teas in the world. I would consider all of them to be poison today. The problem is that nobody's doing the Hakala lab tests. They're all going to their local lab and they're testing radioactive iodine. They're all looking for Chernobyl. None of these iodine blood tests that you get are testing organic iodine. They're testing for radioactive iodine.
Mammals need iodine. It's very important. Adults, if they have an iodine deficiency, can wind up with fatigue. They can wind up with trouble losing weight. They can wind up with a goiter. If children don't have enough iodine in the womb and when they're breastfeeding and when they're growing, they can actually lose up to 10 to 15 IQ points and can wind up with lots of different developmental delays and disorders. So the iodine is a very important topic, and you're not going to believe some of the stuff I tell you at the end of this video. So if you know someone who has any of these symptoms, who's thinking of having a child, who's breastfeeding, who's pregnant, please consider sharing this video with them, because this is important information that you don't normally get told in your high school health class or even in college level courses. We all know that iodine is somehow related to thyroid function, and that's fine, it is, but iodine does so much more and is so much more very, very important to optimizing your human life. So let's talk about iodine. Now, first of all, iodine is an element. It's number 53 on the periodic table of the elements. Remember that table? Iodine's on there. It was discovered way back in 1812 by a chemist. We've known about it for a long, long time. It's in the group on the periodic table of the halogens. So that also includes fluorine or fluoride, you may have heard of, chlorine or chloride, bromine or bromide, and then there's another one called astatine, which you probably have never heard of. I hadn't until I was making this video. So the predominant source of iodine on our planet comes from the ocean. And so if you live near the coastline, then there's tons of iodine in seafood and kelp and sea plants, and also in the soil near the ocean because of the pounding of the waves. And some of the iodine gets in the air, then it comes in and it's rained down on the soil. But as you get further and further away from the coastline, there's less and less iodine in the soil. Indeed, there are regions in the central part of the North American continent that have almost no iodine in the soil whatsoever. And back before we started to think about iodine and actually put it in things like salts, these people, almost all of them had a goiter, which is a swelling of the thyroid gland, because there was just no iodine in the soil. And so when they grew their crops and harvested their animals, there was no iodine for them. And so their thyroid had to work double time or triple time, and it got much bigger than it should be. And so during one of the wars, when we were trying to draft young men for the service, we couldn't take them if they had a goiter. And so the federal government and Big Food came up with the bright idea of putting iodine into salt, which is a completely artificial construction. Iodine doesn't typically come in salt in any meaningful amount. But that's how they decided to do it, because everyone loves salt, everyone needs salt, everyone eats salt. So they thought that's a pretty good way to get iodine into people's diet. And indeed, there are much worse ideas than that. I'm going to opine later on in this video that there's probably better ways to get your iodine than that. So we talked about the source. Now, here's a very important fact that you may not know. Every vertebrate needs iodine to survive, okay? And I'm talking about from humans to lions to gorillas, all the way down to the tiniest lizard, the tiniest little rodent. Every animal with a spinal column has to have iodine in order to be alive. If I could magically reach into your body and pull out every atom of iodine out of your body, you would be dead within an hour. That's how important it is. And we always think about it in reference to the thyroid gland, but what you're going to find out later in this video is that it's much more important than that. It's very important for other functions as well. Now, a deficiency, as we said, leads to goiters, but it also leads to hundreds of other medical problems, other signs and symptoms, and other suffering. And so I want you to understand just how important iodine is. Why do you need it? Well, let's talk about this. Now, obviously, you've heard of the thyroid connection. You have to have iodine in order for your thyroid to make thyroid hormone. So thyroxine, which is T4, the 4 stands for 4 atoms of iodine. Triiodothyronine has 3 atoms of iodine in it. And there's actually T1 and T2, which are thyroid hormones you've never heard of. Doctors will say, well, they don't do anything. Now, and if you follow me much, you'll know that the human body doesn't do anything for no reason. So T1 and T2 definitely serve purposes. We just don't know what they are yet. We need to get on that and find that out. So the thyroid concentrates iodine out of your bloodstream that you've eaten, and that's how you make thyroid hormone. You may know the thyroid is your master gland. It's in charge of really the function of all other glands and all other tissues in your body. So this is, right, first and foremost, very, very important that you have optimized thyroid function, and you cannot have that without adequate amounts of iodine. Now, but here's the kicker. Here's what most people don't know, including most doctors. Every gland in your body, from your sweat glands to your salivary glands, your spit glands, to your pancreas, to your liver, every gland, whether exocrine or endocrine, concentrates iodine.
A lot of people are scared of this supplement, so I think it's important we go into it. And you mentioned Lugol's. Let's talk about dosage-wise what you take and why you don't fear it.
I learned about iodine and how there's an epidemic of deficiency when I read Dr. David Brownstein's book, and it was probably back in 2008. I don't know, it was forever ago. And I'm like, holy crap. And then, of course, I didn't blindly believe Dr. Brownstein. I was like, that just opened my brain. I'm like, okay, let me look into this. And I found out that most soils are so depleted of iodine, either depleted or the soil has been so misfarmed that the iodine is locked up and inaccessible to the plants. And if the iodine is not in the plant that you eat, you're not going to get any iodine from that plant, even if it's supposedly iodine rich. If the cow or the pig or the chicken that you eat has not grazed on grass or bugs or worms that came from iodine rich soil, I don't care what the USDA Food Data Central says about iodine content. It's not going to have enough iodine. That's number one. Now, like I said earlier, if you live within 20 miles of an ocean coastline or an island, your soil is probably iodine sufficient. And if you eat plants that grow there or you eat animals that graze there, you're probably going to be fine. Or if you eat fish from the ocean, you're going to be fine, right? Now, I learned that the Japanese will sometimes, their average diet, they'll eat 17 milligrams, okay, every day, which is 17,000 micrograms. Now, our federal government here in the United States says that you need 150 micrograms a day. And what that's going to do is let you not have a goiter. That's literally is not optimal. That's just the minimum you need to not have a goiter. And if anybody's read their history, they know that back during World War I, there were tens of thousands of young men that the U.S. military couldn't draft because they had a huge goiter. They're so far from an ocean that there's just no iodine there at all. And so they were also eating poverty foods, basically living on corn and wheat and beans. And so there's no iodine in that because the soil had no iodine. So they all had this humongous goiter. You can't send a boy off to fight if he's got this huge goiter because you know that he's not going to be an optimal soldier. And so that's where iodizing the salt came from. And then other countries followed that lead. And there's actually some countries that put iodine in the diet in other ways besides salt. I won't spill the beans. People can do their own research and find out how do other countries get iodine in the diet. So now, why do we need this iodine? It's all about your thyroid gland, right? Wrong. Here's the thing, and I've got a YouTube video with the research proving this in the show notes that you can click on and read it yourself. Every cell line, and there's hundreds and hundreds of different types of cells in the human body, right? Every cell line we've ever looked at has something on its cell membrane called a sodium iodide symporter. This is a little machine on each cell of your body. And as far as we know, it's every single cell in the human body. We've never found a cell in the human body that didn't have an NIS, sodium iodide symporter. And this is a little machine that spits out sodium and pulls in iodine. The human body does not do things that don't benefit itself. That would be a waste of energy. These cells are not pulling in iodine just for the hell of it, because it's popular, because it's a meme. They're not doing that. They're doing it because they need that iodine. So the take-home message is, iodine's not just about your thyroid. Now, if you've studied a little bit, or if you're a woman with fibrocystic breast disease, you also know that breast tissue, in both men and women have breast tissue. Women, on average, have more. Breast tissue also concentrates iodine. There's a reason for that. There's multiple reasons for that, right? So if you've read a little bit, or you have fibrocystic breast disease, you know it's not just the thyroid, it's also mammary tissue. And then if you've read a little more, you're like, oh, but the salivary glands, they also concentrate iodine. That's weird. Wonder why they do that. But then when you find out the truth, Jesse, that every cell in the human body needs iodine and actively harvests iodine from the bloodstream, then you're like, oh, God. So, I mean, if every cell in my body does that, and also remember, I'm an animal biologist. Every cell in every animal we've ever studied, Jesse, has a sodium iodide symporter and pulls iodine from the environment into their body. Now, who can know that and know the truth of that? Read the research in my YouTube video about iodine and go, okay, well, that must mean, by definition, that iodine is a big damn deal. Yes, there's actually a ton of research in European countries and Scandinavian countries about iodine and brain development in children. And you can literally add 10 points to the average IQ score. And there's problems with IQ scoring. I agree. I know. Don't get started on that. But if you can increase your child's IQ score by 10 points on average by making sure that they get sufficient iodine in their diet when their brain is developing, come on. That makes this a huge deal. Iodine, supplementing iodine will literally make fibrocystic breast disease disappear. Will make it go away. It will make a goiter disappear, make it go away, right? And then every cell in your body is obviously benefiting from having good supplies of iodine in your diet, or your cells wouldn't be pulling it in from the outside environment. Iodine is a huge deal. The average doctor has no idea about anything I just said. And so if you go to your doctor, they're liable to yell at you if you tell them you're taking an iodine supplement. They're liable to be like, oh my God, no, because they remember that when they were a child, there were medications that their grandmother, if they skipped their knee, they would put that on their knee that had a skull and crossbones on it. And so they remember that and like, oh no, you don't want to, And they also know that you can kill someone's thyroid with radioactive iodine. That's not what comes in an iodine supplement, okay? But you can absolutely kill somebody's thyroid with radioactive iodine. But that's not what's in the supplement. And so we know, we kind of sort of remember these weird vague memories of, oh, I think that's bad, right? Skull and crossbones, oh, it killed his thyroid. And then we apply that to just, getting iodine in your diet. And it's foolishness, but only the human species can be so intelligent but still be so susceptible to just abject foolishness. It's a fascinating species, isn't it?
How does somebody figure out dosage?
So I typically will put 3 drops of 2% Lugols in my morning cup of coffee. And so then also I told you occasionally I'll eat some tuna, eat some salmon. Even the cheapest tuna and cheapest salmon is going to be a great source of iodine. If you want to try to eat predominantly plant-based, please don't. But if you do, then any kind of sea vegetable, seaweed is going to be an excellent source of iodine in your diet. Also, the minerals from salty, they have added iodine, I think 300 mics a day, so it's not enough, but it's at least going to get you enough that you'll never develop a goiter, and it'll give a little bit for the rest of your cells in your body to use. We're working on actually increasing the amount of iodine in the salty minerals as we speak. We're trying to figure out how to do that while keeping true to what I said earlier of 100% clean, trustworthy, transparent ingredients. And so we're working on that right now. But iodine's a huge deal. Nobody needs to be afraid of iodine. Now, Dr. Brownstein, who I mentioned earlier, he recommends anywhere from 25 to 50 milligrams a day, which is 25,000 to 50,000 micrograms a day. Now, the average doctor is going to lose their mind if you tell them you're taking that much iodine. But the research is definitive on this. There is no harm that comes to people from taking that much iodine. I don't recommend that much, but if you want to take more than, so 2 or 3 drops of 2% Lugols is going to be about 5 milligrams or 5,000 micrograms. And so that's my daily dose, is 5 milligrams a day. But if you want to take 10, 25, 50 milligrams, I don't think it's going to hurt you. Keep in mind, the average Japanese person eats 17 milligrams a day just in their daily diet because it's so full of seafood and sea vegetables and seaweed. They get 17 to 20 milligrams a day just in their regular diets, even if they're not trying to optimize for iodine. And there's literally no bad outcomes from that in Japanese society or Japanese medical literature, which I've looked at. So you cannot say, oh, that's dangerous. Based on what? Show me the research. Guess what? They strike out every time because there's no research showing that. So I think that most people, if they just put 2 or 3 drops of Lugol's 2%, there's also a 5%, which is fine. Put that in your food or your drink every day. You're going to be happy you did that. And it will not cause thyroid cancer. It will not cause hyperthyroidism, and it will not cause or worsen Hashimoto's thyroiditis. These are myths out in the medical community that are absolutely not true at all. And these are myths that are perpetuated by some authors and gurus who I have a ton of respect for and am friends with, but they're just wrong about that. They're just wrong.
Today, the Trump administration is demanding bold reform in our medical education system. I'm leading a team at HHS with the support of Secretary McMahon at the Department of Education that targets a situation that everyone has long recognized as wrong, but no one has yet had the gumption to fix. It's the woeful lack of nutrition education in medicine. Poor diet drives America's chronic disease crisis, fueling 7 of our 10 deadliest conditions. Each year, it claims an estimated 1 million American lives through diet-related illnesses. Meanwhile, we pour more than $4 trillion annually into treating these preventable diseases, and we continue to graduate physicians unprepared to confront their root cause. The good news is that diet not only causes these conditions, it can also prevent and reverse them. But for too long, we've instead analyzed the chronic disease crisis, commissioned studies, and pontificated about the importance of nutrition without taking any meaningful action. Recent data reveals a critical disconnect. Although all medical schools claim to include nutrition in their curricula, most medical students report receiving no formal nutrition education throughout their entire training. This leads to a troubling reality. Most medical students recognize nutrition as necessary. Nearly all medical residents are asked to counsel patients about nutrition. But fewer than a quarter of practicing physicians feel adequately prepared to provide nutrition advice. We can reverse the chronic disease epidemic simply by changing our diets and lifestyles. But to do that, we need nutrition to be a basic part of every doctor's training. We'll start by embedding nutrition directly into college pre-med programs and testing it on the MCAT. Every future physician should master the language of prevention before they even touch a stethoscope. Under President Trump's leadership, we are going to systematically transform nutrition education throughout American medicine. For more than 200 of America's medical schools, 13,000 residency and fellowship programs, and ultimately each of the nation's 1.1 million practicing physicians. In the future, doctors won't just prescribe drugs, they'll be able to prescribe diets as well. By confidently screening for diet-related diseases and collaborating with nutrition experts to recommend food-based solutions. Our reforms will save our country hundreds of billions of dollars and prevent millions of debilitating chronic diseases. This is an approach that is both radical and common sense. We're going to reconnect medicine with its roots. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." His advice remains true today, and we're bringing back food to its proper place in medicine.
The 1800s, Dr. J.H. Salisbury, for whom the Salisbury steak was named after, did a 30-year research project into optimal nutrition for human beings and wrote an entire book called The Relation Between Alimentation and Disease, basically saying the relationship between disease and what you eat. And he found that people that stopped eating plants, just ate a pure meat and water diet, really advocated red meat and water, were reversing things like rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. This was a century before we had any significant medications that would help this. People today are doing this all over the world. People may know of Jordan Peterson, his daughter Michaela Peterson, who had such severe juvenile rheumatoid arthritis that she had 2 joint replacements of her ankle and I believe her hip when she was 16 years old. She went keto first and eliminated out a lot of different toxins and nightshades in particular. Had very, very good results. Then she dropped all the salads as well, just went to pure meat and water diet. Now she's off all medications and she's having kids and she's healthy. She has not had a single flare up. She had salad once and that gave her a flare up. And she's like, all right, never doing that again.
Demonstrated that if we look down at a fire, picture a fireplace between us here, if we look down at a fire, around a campfire, the like, all the stem cells in our bodies turn on. We tried to figure out how are stem cells being activated by the fire, and turned out that it had to do with not just the fire and its presence, but our eye trajectory too. If I looked past the fire and didn't look into the fire, my stem cells didn't turn on. But if I dropped my gaze away from the horizon and looked down at the fire, my stem cells turn on. And I believe it's a story of, instead of chasing the future on the horizon, we need to look down into the energy that is between us. This fire that sits between us, we look down for a moment, become present. Instead of future looking to that horizon, we become present enough to sit in stillness and watch that vibrational experience of a red coal glowing and pulsing in the night. There's something in that remembers ourselves. And it was around those fires that we sang our first songs, danced our first dances, and told our first stories as humanity. And that runs all the way to today. The place I have felt as an earthling for the first time in my half a century, it's in the African bush, around fire, listening to African drums, hearing the vibration of voices and tongues that I had forgotten existed. And in remembering that, I find my humanity again. I realize I am from here. I do belong here, and I am of this place. That is remembered around a fire looking down. And so gather around a candle or a fire, whatever it is, and start to tell stories again of things remembered, or of yesterday if you need to. But start telling a story around flame, and that is maybe your journey back into growing a piece of food yourself in your backyard. There's going to be a deep remembrance of you of this is what peace feels like. This is what that pause does. Staring into the flame, you can find the silence necessary to find that guiding sense within you that we call intuition.